Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of sinister tones with a band whose name, at least, seems like they should embody this pretty well. The band is called Sinistro, which is Portuguese for sinister. We're going to be looking at the track O Equivocado. Wait, Equivocado. Yeah, O Equivocado. I think I said that right the first time, but I don't know. Something about it threw me off a little bit. Let's dive in. See what they're bringing to the table today. Yeah, I mean immediately. They're just hitting all the right vibes. Dude, this is good. Such a big sound overall, but the vocals also being well projected, lots of body to them. Nice pedal tone. Tension. Back to the static. We have the exterior vocals layering on top of that as well. Oh, we have some... I wonder if the strings were in that riff last time too. Bringing some creepiness into this too. It's a rather slow tempo too. Maybe high 70s, low 80s. Looks like we're about 85. I was a little off on that. Ooh, the softness of the vocals to pull us back into this lighter area. The vibration on the guitars there, that's a really nice touch for this. And whispers even. interesting having just the two guitars with these razor sharp tones, but they're also both a little distinct in their timbre as well. It reminds me of the way black metal guitars are produced. It's interesting because until that chord right there, it doesn't really feel as tense, almost as if there's hope. A big uplift here, and then it just crashing down into that tension. Bring us back to this to presumably wrap this up. That song right there. I know we still have one more track this week, but I don't know if it's going to top that as far as discoverability. No, as far as discovery in general. I quite enjoyed that. It is a highlight for me this week, and I think I'm going to need to check more of this band out. This came off of a 2024 album called Vertice? I don't know if that last E is pronounced or not, but I might have to check this out. 6 tracks, 50 minutes. All of them are a bit on the longer side, just like this one. I'm intrigued though. This was solid. So this is weird. Part of me wants to say that we just checked out doom metal. We have heavy abrasive guitars. There's an emphasis, proper grammar, on weight and size of instrumentation. Most of the instruments do work together to help create a unified sound. It helps give these riffs and these notes and chords that extra bit of weight as there's a unity between all the instrumentation. But there's also a really strong sense of clarity to the production. It never really enters into a wall of sound despite the unification of composition. All the instruments come together to create something larger, but it never becomes the sound, where you can't really discern the different parts of the sound. Here I can still hear the bass, I can hear the guitars, I can hear the drums. They're all still individual in the mix. From that perspective, it's very doom metal. A bit on the slower side. 85 isn't super slow, but much of this song feels slow. There's almost a halftime element to a lot of it if you're not paying attention to those faster hits, especially towards the end when they began to emphasize every other beat rather than every beat, and it really feels like it starts being this weighty, plodding movement, just very slow and meticulous. very heavy to get through. But here's where that kind of falls apart for me. This doesn't feel like doom metal to me. I don't know what part of it doesn't feel like doom metal to me. And I'm curious if other people are in that same position. They're listening to this and they're like, I don't know. I think to me it's a bit of palatability to it. Maybe it's the general harmonic element being more sinister than dreary or heavy. It doesn't feel doomy to me. I don't know. But something about this never really clicks into even a metallic area. To me, I kind of want to view this as rock music with really distorted guitars. But compositionally, I think this veers closer to rock than metal, which is really interesting. Because now we have a conversation of sonic genre versus compositional genre. And I think that's where the clash is coming for me, because I typically listen to things compositionally. When I listen to music, there is a semi-translational element where I'm kind of putting it on sheet music in a sense, and listening more to the notes than what's being played. And so I do end up thinking about music more from that musical side than the artistic side. More of what are the notes, what are the chords, what are these emotions, rather than what are the specific tones and production. I mean, even if you go back to the beginning of this channel, I didn't start talking about production until like 2 years in. It was just one of those things that I didn't listen to. You can give me the most janky MIDI recording, and if it's solid music, I'll tell you it's good. How it's all dressed up doesn't always register for me. So maybe that's where the division's coming from. Anyways, this is super cool because it is, aside from the really gritty harmonic side, I mean, there is some really tense, sinister tones in here. It kind of feels like hard rock to me. And it will not surprise me if everyone in the comments is like, hard rock? Seriously, dude, nah, this is nothing like that. I get it. Trust me, I get it. But there's something very palatable to this entire track. Part of it may be the production of it all. It's very clean. The heaviness feels like more of a texture, an artistic choice, rather than a specific tone sought out for genre idea. And what I mean by that is, like, usually when you put a band together, you might not know exactly what you're going to make, but you know what you're going to make, right? The first time you meet up, you kind of know if you're going to be a pop rock band or a metal band, right? You kind of already have a little bit of that distinction. And so you kind of craft your sound and your tone based on the music you want to make. You want to make a metal album with acoustic guitars. You could if that was your intention, but if you wanted to make metal, you're not going to use acoustic instrumentation. Here, though, it feels more like an artistic decision. Rather than saying we want to make heavy music, they said we want to make sinister music. The heaviness is a component of that. But I want you to really take notice when we shifted the energy down, when we removed the size of the instruments, kind of focus on what those sections felt like. The lightness of the vocals, the lack of layers in the vocals, the instrumentation, the guitars, the drums, the bass, kind of coming down and layering in size and impact. Then also think about the weight of the instruments. And I think this in particular is what really sells me on this. The guitars are large, but not heavy. There isn't this massive low-end pull, this buzzsaw, scratchy compression to them. They're big sounds, absolutely, but they're not really metallic. The compression is tastefully applied. The white noise, the static, the overdrive, it's all rather tasteful. It's a very light form of metal. I don't know why I keep coming back to this topic of why doesn't this feel like metal to me, but it's stuck on my mind because it's like a puzzle. I know this thing to be true, but I don't know why, and I want to figure out that why so much. My gut just tells me this isn't very metallic, but it is. All right, we're just going to try to get away from this. Let's look at things a little more objectively here. This track is Sinister, though. Just looking at the harmonic elements right from the start. Most of these chord progressions either start off in a very sinister, aggressive tone, or they start off with a bit of rest, maybe some darkness to it, and then immediately move into something incredibly dark and ominous and antagonistic. There is something about this song that consistently tells me I am not welcome here. I'm kind of curious how often the music matches their band name, because Sinistro absolutely describes this track. Every moment of it feels sinister and aggressive, and I love that. But it's one of those cases where it's like, did you pick the band name because you only wanted to make sinister music? Or because you're really good at it? Maybe it just comes really natural for this group to make music that sounds like this. You're like, oh, let's just call our band Sinister. People will know before they've turned the album on what they're in store for. Oh man. But it's incredibly descriptive. One of those band names you know from the start. There are moments of hope, though, and I find this to be the most interesting part of it, because after you get past the fact that this is sinister, heavy music, and you kind of get a minute or two in, you're like, okay, this is what they do. We've explored like 2 or 3 different ideas here. All of it is heavy. All of it is sinister. And then like 4 or 5 minutes in, we get that moment of uplift. And I pointed it out because I knew I wanted to come back and talk to it. It is one chord that has hope to it, and we sit in it for a while. I was going to say it's like 4 bars long, but given the tempo, it's probably only 2 bars long. And it kind of dances. There's a little bit of darkness. It's because of the melody. There is a riff on top of a chord, and the notes that are being played in the melody have different relationships to the chord, and so the emotion kind of wiggles around a little bit. Hope, neutrality, a little bit of darkness, some sort of sorrow or I don't know, unease maybe, coming back up to something more positive. It's a lot of things. But when that next chord hits, all of that is dashed to the ground and shattered. This is one of the, maybe it's just because of the massive contrast here, but to me it feels like the most aggressive chord in the song. All of that hope is gone and it is replaced with tension and again, antagonism. This song actively feels like it wants me to leave. I really love this moment. First of all, because I wasn't expecting anything like it. The majority of this song is pretty dark. This little tinge of hope is an interesting moment, but also because of the contrast. I think that elevates this whole moment here. There really isn't much else to talk about the harmony. It's fairly one note here. We have varying levels of tension and darkness on this track. Even our rest, our resolution, and our chord progressions still has an edge of darkness to it. It is a song that is fairly consistently in the sinister realm of feeling and emotion. Now, there is a really nice contrast to all of this, though. A lot of the song is heavy, but that second verse flipped the script a little bit. We had a heavy intro, heavy first verse, heavy chorus, and then we brought the energy down. I really liked this moment. One, because it allowed me to hear the music devoid of the heaviness and grit and overdrive and all of that. But two, because it is the beginning of a descent. I don't know what this descent means. We'll get into how this works musically, though. The energy comes down little by little over the course of like a bar and a half or so, 2 bars. It's a gradual fade, sort of. The instrumentation gets lighter, less layers. The vocals are no longer as wide and full. They're kind of narrow and projected a little bit more. Not necessarily going for the airy etherealness to lighten the vocals, but just removing some of the width from them, putting the projecting the voice from more of the front of the mouth rather than the back of the throat. So we have this whole like softening up of the idea, but it doesn't take too long that we kind of strip even some more of that away, and we come down to a very simple section with whispered vocals. I don't know what this is all supposed to represent, but to me, it sort of caught me off guard. Had me drop my defenses a little bit, because the song was reaching more and more, in a sense, intimate sounds. It made me want to lean in a little bit closer. Everything's getting quiet. It's not quite as heavy. It's not quite as in your face. Still trying to hear what's going on. And then it comes back larger than ever. I really like this. It's great sound design. It's great attention grabbing, and it also creates a nice bit of pacing, having rising and falling energy throughout, rather than just being at the 10 all the way through, which it very easily could have done. So I enjoy that. But something I want to wrap this up on real quick, and I kind of touched on it earlier. There's a general palatability to this. I think I've kind of already touched on everything, but I want to tie it all together within this umbrella topic of how listenable this is. It is definitely an antagonistic emotion. The atmosphere, I don't think, is going to be for everyone at all times. But I think sonically, this really isn't that bad. As heavy as the guitars, drum, and bass can be, they're all rounded off, soft around the edges kind of idea. As I mentioned earlier, the guitars aren't buzzsaws. They're not gritty. They're sort of a soft type of weights, big and large, but not buzzsaw style, high compression, high distortion sounds. It's just a big booming tone. The clean vocals, I think, go a long way in having this song be a bit more listenable. And I think that just from a sonic perspective, looking at all these instruments, and maybe this is why it doesn't feel metallic to me, is because everything just kind of feels soft. And when we add in the synths and the strings and all of the extra ideas in there, it ends up sounding more like soundtrack work to a horror film or a thriller. And I think that that kind of gives some familiarity to it too. This is sort of like, what if we made a soundtrack but put some words to it, made it into more of a typical, music. How would I word this? Non-soundtrack work where the music is the focus and not a part of a larger whole. We take that sound and we make a traditional song out of it. And it works incredibly well. The layering in here is super effective, but it's also simple too. Most of the time, the bass and the guitars and the violins and the bells and the vocals are all pretty much on the same page. As much as the layering is doing a lot of heavy lifting and atmosphere, compositionally, this is pretty simple. Most instruments are playing the same thing. And so that also increases the palatability of it, as it isn't complex to listen to. You can engage with the entire atmosphere at one time. You don't have to pick apart different instruments. And then you can kind of have the atmosphere with the vocals in it, which is how a lot of mainstream music is. You don't need to pay attention to all the instruments. They form the background sound. You kind of absorb that emotionally while listening to the vocals. And this captures that very well. And maybe that's also why I have a hard time calling it metal, because I don't know, it's missing the grit, the heaviness, the difficulty in listening at times. It's an interesting track, but I'm totally on board for this. Mainstream horror soundtrack music. I love it. It's unique. Let me hit some lyrics on this, see what's going on there. The song is in Portuguese. There's a chance that this translation isn't fantastic. But what Google Translate gives me seems to be a song about finding oneself in despair after heightened elation. That is to say that someone had happiness and now no longer does, and they're allowing this to sour their vision, their view of the world, tainting it to be a bit bleaker and darker than it was prior. It says the story returns to being the same, a smile that hides without pity, this despair. The chorus kicks in, and what I like about the chorus is it changes every time. It talks about a kiss, but what that kiss is with or without shifts and changes every time we return to the chorus. The first time it says that it is despair disguised in a kiss with love, fervor, and radiance, that the kiss was beautiful at one time. Later, though, we will see that the kiss is with fear, resentment, and without love. And finally, we see that the kiss, oh, it's the same thing, fear, resentment, and without love. So there's only the one transformation then, the original memory, or the original event possibly of this kiss. Now, I wonder if the kiss is metaphorical or not. If it's a literal kiss that is metaphorically filled with love, fervor, and radiance, and then that gets turned into fear and resentment, it could be that this song is about a past relationship. I don't think it necessarily needs to be, and I think the kiss can be metaphorical and can be simply the feeling or relationship the person has to a past moment of their life. But I still like this idea that what once was filled with love and radiance is now fear and resentment. That the same thing in memory hasn't changed, but the relationship to that event, to that place, has changed. It says, no smile has ever been the same after recognizing with dismay this pity, for who returns to being the same after realizing with regret? I really like that, because it brings in the idea of wishing that those things hadn't happened. That's the regret element. It says that when you regret actions in your past, it changes your relationship to them. I mean, that's exactly what the chorus is doing. It says that this fear is disguised, and I keep coming back to that. It's used frequently on this track, and I don't know exactly how to interpret that within my interpretation of this track. But it is a very poignant element, and I wish I had more insight into it. A lot of this comes together in the final stanza, which I believe is the spoken word part towards the end of the song. It says, words are just words. They create fantasies, and in a look we seek to understand. It's stronger than loneliness, unexpectedly and without reason. There are things that are not forgotten. Sacred kisses, bitterness almost dissected, and hope suspended, and sometimes canceled. We're the owners of illusions and conspiracies. I love this. This is a perfect way to encapsulate and kind of break down the strength of regret and past memories and how we can remember things and wish that other things had happened, and kind of build ideas in our mind of what if scenarios. What if I hadn't have done that? What if I had have done that? Would my life be different now? Would it be better? We build these illusions out of non-realities. But it also leans onto the idea of what we remember and why. It says that it's unexpected and without reason. the things that are not forgotten. Why do we remember specific things? Why do we remember heartbreak, bitterness, also sacred kisses? I like that one right there. A beauty to it, a mystery. It elates. It was just a kiss at the time, but your mind remembered it. There was something special about it, and now it's a memory with a lot of powerful emotions tied to it. This is a song, not necessarily so much about the end of something, the moving from one state to another, but about what we do as we progress in our lives and how our brain helps dictate who we are, how we feel about things, and how so much of it we don't really have a choice over. We make these decisions, spur of the moment things possibly. It is just an in the moment element, but 10, 15 years from now, you realize that you've never forgotten that. It stuck with you for one reason or another. And maybe there were even moments that you wanted to remember, something that felt powerful to you in the moment, but didn't stick around, like those moments that you didn't think were that interesting. Or maybe as interesting would be another way to word that. Yeah, solid poetry here. I don't necessarily know where the sinister element comes into this. Musically, this seems to be more about regret than anything else, but I guess there's also this component of the fear that I still don't get. But there is a fear of the mind here. Its ability to make things worse by remembering the worst of things, by holding on to emotions, by holding on to events that make us feel sad or regretful. We can't do anything about it. We are beholden to these electrical signals in our body. Interesting track here. These are my thoughts on Sinistro's O Equivocado. Let me know what you thought of this. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe you have your own perspective or opinion on this track, please let me know. Put all of that into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you can find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You'll find links to my music. You'll find links to Linktree in the Linktree link. So my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server if you want to chat with the community, a bunch of stuff. Go ahead and check that out. Above that, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.